Good morning. I call this work session meeting open today, Thursday, February the 10th, 2022. Welcome everyone for being here. We're glad you're able to join us today. We've got several topics we want to talk about. One will be the ARPA plan and assessment project options. We're going to talk a little bit about our lobbyist proposal, and then we've got a couple people presenting too, locals that have some information they'd like to share with us about how they would like to see us use the ARPA money as well. But before we get started, I'd like to ask Mr. George Irby to open us in prayer.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to be alive, and we know we all are thanks to you. We're thanks for the sunshine today that would not hold people back to come to this meeting, that we can share ideas and thoughts in a peaceful, harmony way, a way that would be pleasing to you, Lord. We're thankful for the opportunity to come and serve this community in the best of our abilities. We ask that during this meeting, everybody just have respect for each other. We ask that you be with us and guide us, and everything we do would be pleasing to you. These and other blessings we ask and thank in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Irby. That was so good, I almost said Reverend after you finished. Just as a reminder for those who are tuning in via Facebook, that this is our work session that we have each Thursday prior to our council meetings. Right now we're having them each Thursday at 10:30. Obviously everybody can't attend because of work and other issues, but what we're doing with these is that we're recording them so the council members or citizens who can't see it or can't be here for the meetings, they can watch them later. And we think it's a great way to help us to communicate to one another and tackle some of the really serious issues that we're facing here in Columbus. So with that, I will invite the team from Wagner Engineering to present to the council their updated reports.
Good morning, Mayor and Board, council members. I'm Stephen Thompson, and we brought Steve Huhulian with me this morning to discuss the various options that we presented to the mayor and council earlier this week. We came up with three options based on some of the feedback we received last week at the regular board meeting, and I'm here to discuss those options and answer any questions that you all may have. As our opinion, we believe option one is the best option for the city to pursue, and that's because you can maximize the ARPA funds that you receive from matching funds from the county, the state, and also possibly federal appropriations. So with that, option one, we removed the $400,000 from the police salaries that we included last week, and we put that $400,000 into the housing. And from some of our discussions with the supervisors, that was one of the priorities that they had as well. $400,000 to help, assisting the city in removing some dilapidated housing. Option two was to include the premium pay of $1.3 million. But with that, we have to reduce some of the funding for infrastructure. And so by reducing some of the matching funding in infrastructure, it's going to require some money from the general fund. The city will have to produce. If we apply for grants, for example, CDBG, that requires a 25% match in grants. And so that's the reason you'll see the $162,000 would have to come from the city's matching funds. And then option three, we took the $1.3 million premium pay and cut that amount in half and included $650,000. But we still had to subsidize the drainage, the amount that we have to find for drainage, because the drainage still has to be done. We identified about $48 million in projects, in our initial assessment. But we're gonna go back, once we do the countywide stormwater assessment, we're gonna identify additional projects, but the 48 million will get us started until we can, to help the citizens see some effect from the stormwater drainage sooner rather than later. And so, but like I said, we still have to find additional funding. That's the reason we have the CDBG grants and the city applying the 25% matching portions. Any questions so far? I know these are.
Before you go through the rest of these options, if you could, up in the top section of each one of these proposals where it's got the general, it's got cost up there, if you could review those just so the council knows exactly what that is.
Sure, yes, sir. Of course, the first one is the ARPA needs assessment, 55.7. That's what we're doing now. That's what you all hired us for back in December. The updated comprehensive master plan. In our discussions with department heads and city officials, the plan has not been updated in a number of years, and certain agencies require it to be updated every 5 years, and that's what efficiency and effectiveness study. This is every efficiency effectiveness study that we've been a part of produces cost savings that more than covers itself. Steve has done a number of these, and what percentage do you say that they can save money?
Every community is different. But having done these across the country, typically the annual savings, if not the first year, by the second year, exceeds what you spend on that type of thing. But there are other benefits to going through that as well. So it's not just savings, but in many cases, it also looks at similar communities, aspirational communities. What do they do? How do they do it? How many people do they have for this versus that? What do they pay their people? So it's not uncommon to find out that there may be recommendations to raise certain pay levels. There may be recommendations to combine departments, to save efficiencies. It really is a matter of how do you deliver services to the public in a more effective manner. And again, traditionally the savings are, a year or a year after. And so when we talk about kind of ARPA in general or any type of one-time money, we talk about what can you do to reduce O&M, which saves you money every single year. What can you do to generate increased revenues? And there are some limitations. So ARPA, there seems to be this idea out there that ARPA can be used for, for economic, or just for economic benefits. And other than a few targeted industries, it is very difficult to use ARPA for that. But there are some things that you can do that may have efficiencies that still fall within that, and that is really especially in that latter part where we talk about the overall community development. So when we talk about some of the stuff in the community development, some of the things we're talking about doing, and we've taken the time to go through and not just, a lot of these other programs that we talk about that we think you ought to use this money to leverage against it. We didn't just go online and come up with some things. For the most part, we've gone through and talked to these people. We've talked to MDOT, we've talked to FTA, we've talked to ARC, we've talked to MDHS. And these aren't just possible programs. These are things that it's highly probable you could or would get. So we've gone to that point. They require certain things in order to be successful, and we've tried to encompass all that. But a program like this, when we look at, and we've even talked to the Link, we sat through with their stuff. Some of these programs should start to have big benefits in getting more of your citizens employed in higher paying jobs, which should start in a few years to generate an additional $15 to $20 million more money within the city of Columbus and something that would grow because it creates a roadmap for more people to get into the system. So those benefits and that additional money flowing is one way that you can do economic development, specifically within the Columbus area because of the uniqueness of Columbus and the whole Golden Triangle area.
Thank you, Steve. And then the funding assistance, that's us helping us apply for the multiple grants that we have indicated on our plans. ARPA compliance and reporting.
Is that kind of like a fee for lobbying? Is that what that is?
No, sir. No, sir. We're not. We don't do lobbyists. That's the applying for the technical. That's most of these applications require a technical aspect to them. You know, comprehensive studies, engineering seals,
Gotcha.
and things like that. And so we provide all of the technical portions on any kind of grant application.
So to have a lobbying firm wouldn't be overlapping with you all, correct?
Oh, no, sir. We're not a lobbyist. We're not a registered lobbyist. But we would assist them, if you do decide to hire a lobbyist, we would assist them in making those presentations as far as the technical aspect. And a lobbyist, you know, they have the contacts, the legislatures, but then, you know, they're relying on us or whomever to provide the technical aspect, to provide the booklets to support the projects that they're lobbying for. That's the difference. And so then the stormwater, which is, you know, our
Go back up to the
Yes, sir.
compliance and reporting, that's just
that's assisting, making sure everything that we're doing is complying with all the ARPA funding, all of the projects that we're recommending and pursuing is compliance with ARPA funding, because there's going to be a check on the back end. You know, they're going to want to look at all of the documents that we, everything that we cut a check for, or the city cut a check for. They want to see that and make sure it was above board. And so we're the assistant in that. Steve, you want to answer something?
Yes, so that really specifically addressed documentation. So when you receive the money and you're doing the work, you know, you want to treat it as you're going to be audited and how you're going to be transparent about it. So you have to document, keep track of all the documentation to support the spending to fall within the eligibility of spending those dollars and the rules, the final rules. So you don't have to give it back. And these are the things that we do. We cross our T's and dot our I's to make sure that if you get audited, you don't have to give that money back on projects that you spend the money on.
Can anyone sit and ask questions?
Sure.
I several things. I only brought this plan one that you have, because that's one that you suggested.
Option one, correct.
Option one.
Yes, sir.
And in a perfect world, and I think, and let me qualify something. The reason why I am speaking because I've heard the presentations. I have worked in the grant field for about 35 years. When I heard your presentation about the applications and things that we can apply for, most of them we have federal and state grants that we've gotten from HUD and other departments, several $1 million in grants. And as a citizen, I'm listening, and when I say in a perfect world, and the city had all the money they needed, then they would say, yes, do this. And like I said, I looked at it, and when I'm thinking, and I was going to ask, you know, what specifically what you all do in each one of these areas where you get in, that you have up here, for instance, update the comprehensive master plan. What does that, what would that consist of? What would you all do? Because we have a plan, and what we need now is just me, I think that there is another way to do that versus using this ARPA money. We've had plans, they're still sitting on the shelves, a lot of plans, and we talked about it when you first came up here. But, I mean, you don't have to address that right now, if you let me just go,
Yeah,
unless you
go
just
on.
want to.
Well, I think, and I don't want to cut you off, George. So, keep in mind, when we're doing this, we're not making value judgments on this stuff. We are going through and saying what qualifies for ARPA and how do we think we can get the best match, and when there are viable, not just potential, but highly probable additional funding you can get, is there a way to make it go further? So, as you know, some of these things we're still waiting on the state, but the initial bills that are out there in the state, I just gave a presentation on this with a bunch of attorneys from Butler Snow and other places. It looks like there'll be an automatic on certain projects 1-to-1 match if you do certain things with certain money. Some of the federal programs, as you know, the matches are much higher, 3-4-to-1 or more. Some of the things that could be done regionally, we could get $20 per dollar in types of matches by combining with other jurisdictions. So we're not trying to make value judgments. We're also not just throwing in things that say, well, we went on Google and found a grant opportunity. We've gone through and vetted these as highly probable because of some things that have been done recently. So the changes in the types of grants for these things have changed. They are now focused on underserved communities, they are focused on minority communities, they are focused on communities with poverty, they're focused on regionalism. What they ask is that you have a real good plan, that you've done your financial homework, so that if they give you the money, they know where it's going and it's all taken care of. So when we pull these things together and we're suggesting some of these things, it is to make you more competitive for. These are not value judgments. Every one of the things in here is a real need. We're not saying one is more important than the other. These are all real needs. Some of them, we think you have a good chance of getting other things. So keep in mind the way that the final rules have been rolled out. You do have that, what they call that $10 million safe harbor or standard allowance. You could set money aside, and these are just budget numbers. Nobody's sitting here with a contract. These are budget numbers on these things. You could earmark something temporarily as a grant match. If you don't get it, come December 29th, 2024, you can simply roll that money into your general fund and do whatever you want with it. Some of these things, there are a few things that you can't do. So I know everybody's heard, well, water and wastewater is a given. Actually, in the final rules, water and wastewater has never been a given. You cannot do water and wastewater for new development. All right? It's very specific on page 275. That means I've read this thing way too many times. Of the final rules that you can't use it for that. Now, there is a way you can put that money in your general fund and do whatever, but the state's not going to be able to match it even if it's a water and wastewater project. And the state is definitely getting audited by the Department of Treasury. So they are very focused on not having to pay their stuff back. So that's why we've gone through this in the way we have gone through it. It is not a value judgment on anything, but if we see a viable methodology and a highly probable methodology for you to address some of these other problems, all we're suggesting is that you take the next 2 years or whatever to try to make them happen. There's really, if you're kind of earmarking some of this stuff as a grant match and it doesn't happen, your money didn't go away. You still have it, and you still have basically forever to decide what you're going to do with it.
I understand everything that you're saying, but my point is, and it seems like what you're talking about now is this compliance and reporting. But I was asking about, first of all, in the line that you had, about this comprehensive plan where you got $125,000.
So, yeah, and you have a comprehensive master plan. It is, as we talked, it doesn't have a whole lot in the implementation.
Right.
And it also is less comprehensive than it should be to work for some of your grant applications. So keep in mind, they're looking for real plans when you do these grant applications. You need to be able to refer to. So your existing comprehensive plan, and it's very graphically pleasing, but you know, as we talked, there's not a whole lot of implementation. Doesn't have a whole lot of focus on things like transit, child care, getting underserved populations into the economy. So it's going to be very hard to point to. So when you go to apply for a grant for something like that, if you can't pull that page out and circle it, it makes it harder. For whoever is doing your grant, it makes it harder. Some of these grants are softer than others. Some of them, as Stephen suggested, there's a lot of engineering behind them. Some of them are a little bit softer. It takes different types of people and different types of skill sets. There is always a political aspect to these things, but politicians can't get you money that you don't apply for. Politicians can't get you money that you didn't qualify for. So there's still work on both sides, regardless of lobbying or your connections. The reason for the comp plan is to make sure that there is language in there that would support all of what we are suggesting that, and what you have suggested to us needs to be addressed. That's why that's in there. So it's both the implementation plan to bring it up to date, but it is also to make sure that it saves you money, time, and effort down the road in applying for these grants.
Okay, that's part of my point.
Yeah.
That's $125,000. Most of the grants, the big grants that you're talking about, it's not going to come out of opera money. Those are future things that has to be done. It doesn't have to be done right now. So that's $125,000 for something that we may need, but we don't need it right now because we only have a few dollars in opera. So I was going down the list trying to, my mind said, those are some things that we may not, I'm not saying we don't need, but I don't think we need them right now. Because to apply for these big grants of $48 million to have those things in that comprehensive plan, we can't use the money that we got right now on those. So maybe next year, that's something that we need to look at. And that's the way I looked at this whole line item of things that you all have on here. Efficiency and effectiveness. You know, we had one of those studies on the, out there with Casey, Public Works. You know, I mean, we've had that done, and that's still something that's, you know, having been implemented and looked at, but there was some direction in terms of implementation. So that's another one that I don't think that we need, just me, right now. Not that it's not something that will help the city. Everything I think you suggested will help the city. I'm saying we don't think we need all of that right now. And any of these, and I don't want to do this in a public setting, but I don't want to do that. But I think that this compliance and reporting, I just see that can be done differently. Again, just me. And I don't know if they're going to make decisions today or what's going to happen, but I just, you know, I heard it and I see it, and I think that it's not the time because of the amount of money. And when we, you know, everything that you said, we probably need it, but we won't get it implemented out of this opera money. The opera money is only about 5.7. Right. And what you said, and it's not for me. I'm saying that you all get close to $1,700,000 and that's something I think could have been spent. I'm not saying that there's not something on this list that you all could help the city with, but I just think that these numbers need to be looked at in a way as, do we need it right now, and do we need to take that out of the opera money?
So, let me jump in real quick and say what because we're not going to decide today, George. You asked that question. When did y'all recommend that we try to have our decisions made as far as being able to leverage this?
And
I just wanted to get that out there real quick so people will know.
right, we're trying to meet the legislature's deadline for this, to apply for their matching fund, and they wanted to have everything done by February 23rd. You know, as far as the 745,000, you know, that's for us trying to help the city achieve 128 or 25 million dollars. You know, so you can't just look at single outs. Well, they're trying to get it 745,000. We're trying to help the city get 128 million dollars through matching funds. We're going to try to leverage the 5 million that the city has with funds from the state, and we're doing this with other communities. So we have a playbook that we're following. We've already spoke to some of the Lowndes County Board of Supervisors, you know, and most of them preference is to use this money for infrastructure. So, I mean, that's just what they would like to see. The legislature is the same way. They would like to use cities and communities to come and ask for matching funds for infrastructure. So if you follow that logic and say we want to use it for infrastructure, then you can get 3 and 4 times what you have. And then, of course, we're going to apply for the BRIC grant, which is FEMA, and they have set aside $1 billion to give to communities every year. So we apply for that every year to help reduce the stormwater funding, and that's specifically for flooding opportunities.
You just threw out the 128 million.
Yes, sir.
You
125,
said,
whatever.
okay, hypothetically, we pay you $750,000, you might get us $128 million in return. All right? That $128 million is not matching ARPA.
No.
We're talking a very small, okay, let's,
correct.
I'll throw a figure out there. We turned 5 million into 20 million, all right, through ARPA funds. Fair?
That's correct.
So you're talking another $100 million that you're talking about getting us, but that has nothing to do with ARPA.
That's
So
correct.
if y'all are getting this through grants, seems to me that's a whole different ballgame over here. We could hire you to go and try to find us $100 million worth of grants. That's totally different than the ARPA money we're sitting here talking about.
Right, and if you go to page 3, you'll see where all the various funding opportunities are at the very bottom. You see state SRF loans, infrastructure, Corps of Engineers, CDBG, federal appropriation, BRIC grant, MDOT. You know, we've got a whole list of places where we're, you know.
So let me ask, I share some of the same interests. Off top, we're looking at 15% of our money going directly to you based off studies and plans and different things like that. That's $750,000, give or take. Then you got another $125,000 annually. So we're looking at, you said to 2026, that's 4 more years. That's another $500,000. So we're looking at actually giving you guys $1.2, $1.3 million out of the ARPA funding. And also, all of these plans, plans 1, plan 2, and plan 3 also include money from the county. Have you guys talked to the county yet? Have they said what they will and will not give? Because from my understanding, the most that they will give us is $1 million. So we're going over all these plans with the assumption that the county is going to give us between $3 and $5 million, and I don't think that's possible. And then we also saying that we coming up with ARPA plan and assessment project options, and you have until February 23rd. What are these projects that we're taking before them to try and even get funding if the session is over with by February 23rd? So it's basically like we're just still in the talking phase of I feel like you guys are still trying, and it's just me, still trying to sell us on your performance when we're actually trying to get some work done with the assessments that you have already done. We're still talking about spending more money on things that we may or may not need right now with just $5.7 million.
We've already had discussions with, as Steve said, with the link and with the board, several members of the Board of Supervisors, and they've expressed interest in helping the city for infrastructure. And now, the infrastructure project that we identified was for stormwater, you know, because most of the flooding comes from outside of the city. You know, it's some major tributaries flowing into the city. So if we can find ways to slow that water down, build retention ponds for the water to sit while it flows through the city and then, you know, come through. They did express interest in helping the city that way. The total estimate for stormwater it's probably gonna be $100 million. But right now, we've identified $48 million in stormwater projects. And that's what we're recommending that we initially go to the state for, go to the county for, to get some matching funds for those infrastructure projects. The other projects, we don't have a sense of urgency for the additional projects. The only projects that we feel there's a sense of urgency for is the infrastructure for the stormwater only.
Have you identified any of the areas that would need work?
Yes, sir. We've got, for example, College Street, and I think that's in Ward 4. That's looking at building a retention pond to help some of that water, to slow that water down from flowing through that community. 4th Avenue, when we had the discussion Tuesday, I mentioned that it's not just one point on the map. That area is actually 60 acres that we're looking at helping alleviate the flooding and water problems. Another area, for example, that's a large area is in East Columbus. That's 200 acres that we're looking at helping reduce the flooding in that area. So, but the main thing is you have to find a way to, before the water even gets to the city, is to slow it down or retain it, and that way help the water that's in the city move more efficiently through. Some of the pipes are undersized, so we have to widen, enlarge some of the pipes, culverts. So, like I said, but that's what.
My thing is when we was discussing this money, my thing was we were looking for short-term projects with long-term benefits. All of these projects that we're talking about seems like they're gonna take years after ARPA has gone to complete. Are these short-term projects that you're thinking about that will give us long-term benefits, or are these projects that you're trying to start with the potential of staying after ARPA is finished?
That's the reason we find, before ARPA even came into existence, the federal government has always had, there's always been grant opportunities available for communities. For example, MDOT, Safe Routes to School, building sidewalks. I remember someone mentioned they would like to see sidewalks. The child care that Steve has mentioned, even the transit. All of these were ideas that help improve the city of Columbus, reverse the trend of population decline, try to find ways to improve the economic situation. So that's the reason our plan is very comprehensive. We're not just looking at infrastructure project. We're looking at ways to build the city, revitalize the city. So it's not going to happen overnight. These projects that we have, like Steve said, we didn't just sit in a corner and just come up with these. We actually talked to a number of people on how to help the city of Columbus. And we feel these projects, sidewalks, child care, the transportation, trying to help people get to work, all of these projects are vital projects which will help the city of Columbus reverse the decline in population over the long run.
And if I may.
Well, we've actually grown this year, 444 people, so we're not declining anymore.
Well, good. Excellent. So Pierre, to go to your point, there's a couple of things real quick. That February 23rd, obviously the legislature is still in session.
Correct.
All right. So it's really to get a placeholder. All right. You have to commit your money by December 31st, 2024. Commit means I've decided what I'm going to do with it. You have to spend the money by December 31st, 2026. So you have 4 years. So these are reasonable things to be done in 4 years. I'm not saying that there's a whole lot of time to sit back. This is not something you need to, you should decide on, next October or something like that, because there's real work to get these things done. You do have time to do it. The state has time to send it through. That is the way it is set up right now. I can tell you, having read through all 700 pages of the original act, several hundred pages, 3 different times of the interim final rules, because they had 3 in 3 days. all their frequently asked questions, all 300 and some pages of their interim final rules. I think that it is not unrealistic that there are going to be some communities that have a hard time meeting 2026. It is not impossible that that deadline may be extended, but it has not been, and that's the way it is right now. So we've set it up with something that can reasonably be done within that time period, that you can commit the money, you can spend the money within those current limitations right now. And that's kind of the way it's set up. Some of the rest of this stuff is important to getting other opportunities and other grants. So keep in mind, ARPA itself was a $1.9 trillion bill. $350 million, or $350 billion, you know, they call it all billions and trillions, you know, pretty soon it's real money. 350 billion went to cities, states, and local governments. About $500 or $600 billion went directly to the $1,400 payments that everybody got. Most of the rest of that money went to various federal agencies, and it is making they're either coming out with new programs or their existing grant programs got a whole bunch of additional money. When I was presenting last week, ARC came up to me and they said, you need to sit down because we've got more money than we're sure what to do with. On top of that, the infrastructure bill is $1.2 trillion, almost half.
Not to cut you off.
No.
We've went to MML, we've heard all about
Yeah.
ARPA, a lot of us have read these plans about ARPA, we know what ARPA can do. We're at the point now where we need to know where we're about to start spending money in a different thing. We know there's billions, trillions, gazillions of money that is eligible for us to get. We get it, we understand it, we know it. What are we about to do with this money? With the $55,000 that we paid you guys already, what are the things that you have assessed that we need, and what are the processes and steps for us to start on working on those projects? That's what I'm trying to get. Like, we know how much money out there. Yeah. We know how much we can get. We know grants can be, we know all of that.
So I think
Get an A plus on that. I think instead of spending money on studies, we should be, focusing on progress that we can get behind as citizens and see a change on right now.
And don't look at this as a chronological thing. All right, it's not saying that, you know, the first line is what you do day one, and the second line is what you do day two, and the third line is what you do day three. We've tried to group them to make it easier to understand. So, from our experience, to get some of this additional money, there are some things that you need to do. It doesn't necessarily have to be done tomorrow. To get the state matching, those are some things, and that is mainly your stormwater.
And that's what I was going to say. Right now, I think the focus should be on meeting with the county and the state to go ahead and get in line to get some fundings for these drainage issues, so the citizens can see some help on the flooding. And then the others that we have in community development, we can also start working on those at the same time. But the only thing I think we need to go ahead and have a sense of urgency for is meeting with our state representatives, because they're waiting for Columbus to make a presentation. They're waiting for you to make an ask on what do you need. All these other communities have already made ask, but they're saying we have not heard anything from Columbus as far as an ask.
Why don't we start with the county and see what the county is going to give us a guarantee? And then if we know the county is not going to give us $2 million, then we don't even need to talk about that anymore.
But we can still go through. We were in D.C. Ma and I were in D.C. last week meeting with Senator Wicker, and they want to help these communities. So I mean, if we don't get certain amounts from the counties.
I understand that, but we're still talking about the county, saying that we're going to ask them for this, but we need to definitely ask them and see if they're going to be on board. And if they're not, then we don't even need to talk about them anymore. We need to move on to the state and move on to the federal.
But they've got to get an agreement from us, and we want them to ask them that. I think that's what they're saying.
That's what I'm saying. We still need to go through the process and ask.
Yeah, they're trying to determine whether that's where we want to ask them for the money.
So we got to pay you all to ask the county for money?
We've already, no sir, that's all included in the 55 that we all of this is part of the initial assessment, so, and all of the things that we're doing now is part of that initial assessment. So nothing else.
So if I may clarify here and back up with this table that you're looking at, you see in all these entries here, update comprehensive plan, efficiency and effectiveness, funding assistance, ARPA compliance funding. We're not saying that you have to do this. These are things that Wagner is recommending to go through the process of how we can ultimately assist the city achieve what we've identified in these 3 pages, the different programs, the different projects that we can implement. Now, as Steve mentioned, this is not just about ARPA. ARPA is part of it. There's non-ARPA programs that we're talking about for long term. And to identify those projects is by doing a comprehensive master plan, updating your comprehensive master plan. When you hire us, we come to you and we bring you a task order, and we can tell you exactly what those tasks and scope of work that we're going to provide the city to come up with the comprehensive plan and the implementation plan. Similarly, with effectiveness and efficiency and effectiveness study, we're not saying you have to do this. We're saying this would be very helpful. If you have one already completed, we would definitely look at it and maybe augment it if that's been so you can be your departments, whatever department we look at, whether it be the Public Works Department or your police department, so they can be effectively delivering the services that the citizens paying for. Again, all these, the 745, they're not coming from ARPA. Those would be coming from general fund later on, and you would realize their value when the outcome of the services we're providing you.
I don't know if I'm speaking for the rest of them. Y'all are looking at it as from a 30,000 foot
Correct.
perspective of here's what you need to do to get your city on track and make money and all this for the next 20 years. We're looking, I thought we were hiring y'all, we got $5 million. Let's stay with that. How are we going to spend that effectively, and how can you help us determine how to spend $5 million and turn it into more and spend that effectively? That pie in the sky $125 million plan is great,
Yes.
but that's not what we're here for right now.
Thank you.
I don't think.
So if you look at the first option, and if you look at stormwater on the first page, and you go to stormwater subtotal, and you look at water and sewer, and you look at subtotal, and then you look at community development, and you look at community development subtotal. And then if you go in the first column, you have ARPA City, so that's what the city is committing, or earmarking, not committing, earmarking that much money. And the second column in that is ARPA County. That's what the city would be asking the county to match for the stormwater. And then you go to the third column, there's ARPA State. That's what the city and the county will be teaming up as a partnership to ask the state for that amount. And similarly, under the community development, you have total that the city's committing to, the county or earmark. The counties, also you're asking the county for 735 under that area. And you'd be going to the state and asking them for 2 million. So if you add them all up, from 8 million to 16 million under the stormwater, plus another 16 million from the community development, you have 32 million.
Let me answer. But Councilman Green, The primary use for the $5 million for ARPA, we recommend it, most of it be used for the drainage. And that's what we think that ARPA could best be utilized, so we could get the matching funds for that.
My question is on the 23rd, that drop dead date, that's what you want to present by that, but to the legislature is for drainage.
Yes, sir. That's what we want to
All right,
go
so,
to the legislature and ask for a matching portion. Whatever the city decides to put for matching from ARPA, for drainage, we want to ask the county for, we want to ask the state for. So if the city doesn't feel comfortable using the $4 million that we have identified in option 1 for drainage, if they want to lower that amount, whatever the city wants to use for ARPA for drainage is the amount we want to go to the county and the state for.
then my question on that is, and I know the mayor said they're gonna discuss the lobbyists. Doesn't that seem like a more logical place to go to the legislature is with the lobbyists asking for something?
I mean, the city, we're not a lobbyist. We're not a lobbyist. And that's their decision to make.
And let me be clear, so the state hasn't finished what they're gonna do with their money. There are some bills out there. When I look at those bills, the reason we're talking about this and getting that placeholder in there is, at this point, it's not really a lobbying thing. The initial bills that still haven't been voted on pretty much say, if you spend it on these things, the state will match it with those things. That's not really a lobbying thing. That's not to say having the lobbyist wouldn't help. Certainly the state has other things. The state has a $1 billion surplus that they're not sure what they're going to do with, so that, if you can get all of it, great. But the ARPA stuff, if you get, just to use numbers, if you get $4 million or earmark $4 million for drainage, if the county matches that, you ought to then be able to almost automatically get that total matched by the state. The way the bills are written now, they have not been voted on. We are still waiting. This is Mississippi, so you're actually probably going to have to at least have a placeholder that may be updated sooner than they decide exactly what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. But that's not necessarily a lobbying thing. Now, when you talk about things like the bond bill, when you talk about the other $1 billion that the state has in a surplus, there may certainly be some lobbying in there. But in terms of the ARPA stuff, even the state is limited to what it can do. All right? The way their bills are written right now, if you go in and say, we're committing this, the county's committing that, all of those are for eligible projects, the way the bills are written now, they haven't been finalized, but the way they're written now, the state will match. Right? It
That's
doesn't.
the reason you see us with
It doesn't require lobbying at that point.
right.
So is this a first
But,
come,
but let me
first
finish
served?
answer. But that's the reason you see Councilman Green, we have $4 million for the city, $4 million for the county, and then the state matching both of those amounts at $8 million. So if you decide to lower that amount that the city wants to spend, say you want to do $2 million from ARPA, and we would like to ask the county to do whatever match you all do, $2 million. Then we go to the state for 8. But keep in mind, the initial assessment for the stormwater problem is $48 million. So the less you put in, you're gonna help some communities, but we want to try to help the city on a holistic basis as far as stormwater is concerned.
And George, to answer your question, it's not necessarily a first come, first serve. Again, they have not finalized these bills. What we have seen in the initial draft they put out, they have put money in there that would allow them to pretty much match anything. The downside is, if you don't get into that first funding round, they may decide next year that they're going to reprogram that money for something else. So it's not necessarily a first come, first serve, but once they've committed and once they've matched, it's your money and your project, and you don't have to worry about them rethinking what they want to do with that money in a year. All right? Not everybody's going to ask, not everybody's going to program their money for things that can be matched. I'm not a psychic, but I can almost guarantee you, looking at the future, that not all that money will be committed. I can also tell you that because of politics, they're gonna rethink what some of that money gets done. So we're trying to help you get it this year, when you can get it, and looks like it'll be matched almost automatically. There may still be money left over next year. There may be other opportunities, but they may change what they want to do. They may change the way they want to do it. They may change how they set it up. They may not. It may still be waiting for you in 2 years, but you're at the mercy of the legislature at that point in time. The way their initial bills are written right now, it is kind of an automatic match if you can get that programmed in there. And that's all we're saying is, once it's been committed, once you've got that match, it's your money, and you're not waiting for them to change their mind in a year.
Do we have any other questions? Give us a reminder of when it would be good to have a final vote on this. Can you do that now? Can you tell us now, just so everybody hears us?
February 23rd, we would like to make a presentation, because your state legislatures are waiting for requests from the city.
So in other words, we need to continue to study this and discuss it, reach out to the members of Wagner for follow-up, and then they've given us 3 options here. If y'all want to tweak those options, because at the end, they're just giving us their professional advice on how they think we can best leverage it. At the end of the day, it's going to be the decision of the council for how it's used.
But if we continue to withhold 1,000,003 or whatever it is that was voted on, we can just realize there's no strategic matching funds for that.
Right.
So
And
then
there are
we
other,
have a smaller pot to work with.
there are other projects on there too that aren't matching. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you all for
We'll
giving
be
us
in
this
touch.
opportunity.
We appreciate all your efforts on this.
Thank
Now
you.
we would like to call up Robert Rett is going to come and talk to us on behalf of the CRA about a request for the ARPA money that they talked to, I think, each of you about earlier in the year. And they wanted to come back and...
Can I pass something out, Keith?
Sure, absolutely.
I know that better than I do. First of all, I'd like to thank Mary Gaskins and the city council members for allowing the redevelopment group to come and appear to this session today. As you know, the urban renewal program is a method economically revitalizes the area of blight through a public and private joint venture. An example is our downtown revitalization efforts. The Bird's Bottom revitalization project is truly a generational project that will have substantial, sustainable, and quality effect on the community. Fully built out, with initial land purchases, infrastructure complete, retail and residential development, the total redevelopment should be approximately a $45 million project, improving the quality of life in Columbus and Lowndes County, assuring population sustainability and growth within the city, also adding tax revenues to the city, county, and revenue to utility companies. The city has funded this project with $3.2 million in bonds to the redevelopment of this 15-acre site, which had over 70 individual derelict houses and lots. So far, we have purchased 68 parcels. Am I correct on that, Jeff? 68 parcels have been purchased, and a third of the engineering drawings have been completed. In progress is our request for proposals, documents to be able to submit to provincial developers to move into the next phase, which will be the private sector. Regarding the infrastructure needs of the 15-acre area, engineering has been performed to determine the extent of cost related to improvements to the site to allow for development. This includes road improvements, drainage, water, sewer, power, and broadband internet. A total cost of $6.4 million has been determined. These additional funds are required to make the project redevelopment economically and financially viable for a developer to ultimately develop the residences, offices, retail spaces, etc. Since these are additional costs, the board has put together a plan which includes asking you, the county, and Columbus Light and Water, plus the redevelopment authority, to split these costs. With the ARPA funds allowing for infrastructure upgrades, we are asking the city of Columbus for $1,070,000, which includes infrastructure work on the water, sewer, broadband, and drainage. Any actual costs in the total that are less than the estimates, those funds will be returned to the city. The redevelopment authority would put up $500,000. Lowndes County would put up $2,423,931. Columbus Light and Water, $2,416,613, and the city of Columbus would be $1,070,000. The estimates include contingency 30%, engineer design and surveying 8%, and construction and administration 6%. The project would not be where it is if not for the initial $3.2 million the city has already provided. The board is hoping by splitting these infrastructure costs between the city, county, Columbus Light and Water, plus the authority, we can push this project forward and make it a reality. Now, I'm here to answer any questions that anybody has on this the best I can. And we've gone through some drawings of the houses that we're talking about building in through Thompson Architect. And I've got a booklet here if y'all want to pass it around and just see. These are some of the houses that we're going to give to developers for potential to be
I
built.
have seen this presentation and, very impressive. Is this something y'all are going to go public with at some time, or where do we stand on that?
We are, Rusty. We were trying to wait until we got the RFP put together before we did that. And we wanted to also get the other two properties bought that we have to buy before we did that. But yes, we have a video that we're ready to put on TV. There's several things we want to do.
Okay.
But we got a couple of things we want to tie up before we do that.
Are we the first people you have approached out of the county and the light and water to ask for this money? Are
No.
we the first?
No, we've already.
What are their responses?
We've already approached the county. We've met with all the board of supervisors. We've had positive response there. We've met with City Light and Water. They're on board. And we've also hired a lobbyist for additional funds. So we're working every avenue we can to make this project come together to fruition. The biggest thing that I want the city to understand, y'all are already $3.2 million invested in this. And if we don't get this over the hump and push through, basically we've got $3.2 million in bonds we're gonna pay back for green space and more property the city of Columbus is responsible for keeping up as far as grass cutting and things like that. On the facility that is really it's the staple of Columbus. When you come into the city, it's the first thing you see is the soccer park complex down there and all that.
So you said you got commitment from Light and Water, and you've gotten good vibes from the county, but not a firm commitment?
That's correct.
Did they indicate when they might give you a firm commitment?
They have not yet, Mayor. We visit with them regularly, weekly. We're speaking to them, so we would hope really soon.
How about your lobbyists? Are you getting any good feedback that?
We are. We had some real positive feedback from the governor on some things that he's trying to do to revitalize downtown cities and small areas, and we got some real good feedback from them.
So if the county doesn't commit, what would that mean?
Stephen, and when we met with them, they were positive, but they didn't give us the full, we're gonna give you all that you're asking for. But we do believe that we're gonna get something from the county.
Well, I'm just saying, if we gave $1 million and then they don't commit, what would that leave you?
Well, at that point, we're back to the lobbyist in Columbus Light and Water.
And will all the things that you got at the bottom go away if the county doesn't commit, like county shall receive 20% of the revenue?
Yeah, if they don't participate, I don't think they'll be getting funds back. And the thing was too, y'all, if we collect from the lobbyist, if we get enough to do what we're trying to do, and we don't need the money, it's coming back to y'all. I mean, we're not trying to build a war chest of funds. If we get all we need from the state, then we're gonna give back to the city, the portion that we don't use. in our overall project, I was talking with Mark Alexander last night, our overall project, if we get this completed, the revenue that we make off this, we would like to go out to the houses by Proper Park and start doing the same thing out there that we did down here on the Section 42 homes out there, if at all possible.
And he started on that project, then
We'd be right behind him.
That would help, if I may, and I talked to Mark, and I was in one of the meetings with, a couple of supervisors, and that's how they were sold on this project of helping with the 2 million, because theirs will not be coming from opera money, it'll be coming out of their general fund. And that's why you see that 20% payback, as to when the project is sold, that they would, get 20% based on what they put in, because like I said, not opera money, so they were sold because, he said, once we finish with this project, that the redevelopment board would put its effort toward, affordable housing, and that didn't necessarily at that time say a specific area, but it would be for affordable housing, so that's why they were sold and said, yeah, we'll afford. They don't have the official vote, but I can say that, during that meeting, a couple of them said that we'll for this. And I know Trip had said.
There's something that needs to be done, we know that.
back to the ARPA money though, and I know they said they recommend drainage and sewage. Now, would this qualify under that match, to be able to get this money matched?
Because it's a new development and the needs is, wouldn't qualify. The simple answer is no, wouldn't qualify for a match, or wouldn't be eligible under the PECFA rules, the ARPA rules.
That might be a loophole in there somewhere, because this is existing roads. This isn't going in and developing an empty pasture.
And drainage.
This is already an established neighborhood that's been there 100 years. So, I'm asking the question, this might be something where, no, this isn't new construction. This is old construction that we're.
Correct.
It was uninhibited, so.
Oh, no, it wasn't uninhibited. We just tore
Well,
down the houses not too long ago.
It's uninhibited when the ARPA money came out though, it was uninhibited.
Well, there's some people still living there.
Yeah, some of them still there, but this is for infrastructure that was already, that's in place. They're not putting in all new infrastructure.
I can check into it. I'm pretty positive they wouldn't qualify, but I'll be happy to get all the information and look further into it.
Yeah, I think that would be a good start, because, we wanna know that before we, if we're able to match it or get it matched, then, we might can contribute less money, get that matched, and then it's still equal up to what you need.
Yeah, that'd be a deal breaker if it could be matched, I would think.
Any other questions for Robert? Well, Robert, listen, I want to thank you publicly for all the hard work that you and the entire board with the Redevelopment Authority have done. Y'all do this for free out of the goodness of your heart and your care and love for our city. And I know it's not always an easy task, but we appreciate your extra efforts. And thank y'all so much. George, did you want to address them in any way about your project? Did you? You're good? Bring to the council, I know that I think you've all have seen it. If not, you've got a copy of our plan or proposal from the lobbyists that we've been engaged in talks with, that we voted to visit with. And I will just say that the more I visit with them, the more impressed I am with this group. They have a real, I think, good understanding of Columbus and where we are. This proposal, I think, would be good for y'all to look through. Our city attorney has looked through it and made some suggestions. But Mr. Thomas and his group are very open to negotiations with us. They want to try to help us find the best plan for the city. And so I think this was kind of a starting point for them, for us to look at and ask them questions. But again, I want to emphasize how impressed I am with this group. And I believe they could be of real benefit to the city. We just need to determine when and how we can engage with them, because I'm convinced that the city would benefit from this group. They're very professional. They have a deep bench of individuals that can help us. This particular agreement, it looks like it only states to me to be lobbying in the state, but they also have federal tentacles they reach out for. So I just wanted to have that at this meeting to see if y'all want to discuss this any further with me, but I just wanted to update you on my negotiations with them.
Have you talked to other cities, towns that they have lobbied with for?
At this point, I have not talked to others. I've talked to other lobbyists that know them. I've talked to other individuals who worked with them professionally, and it's all been very positive. But I've not talked to another city or county government or anything. I can, though. I'll be happy to. Yeah.
That would be good.
Look back in the direction and talk to ourselves, because then they say they got us $500,000 for the amphitheater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've worked for us in the past. I mean, they're.
We hired them in the past?
Mm-hmm.
I think
J5
J5 hired.
Oh, J5
have paid for them in the past for us to be able to get that money, is what they said in the meeting the other night.
Also, I agree with what you said, Mayor. The scope of work seems to indicate that it would only be within the state, but I think it may have been an oversight on their part, because the first whereas provision acknowledges that they work in-state and with Congress. So I think
Yeah.
their wish is that.
And we'd probably need to get them to adjust that line, because
The council meeting, point blank asked them.
You did.
For state and federal, and they said both, so.
Correct.
That may be, I don't know.
So no figure is mentioned so far.
yeah, it's in there.
Yeah, it's in there.
It's
60.
60,500.
Not to exceed $60,500.
For a one-year contract.
Right.
Correct. And I think they're paid, did it say in here monthly or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
$5,500 a month.
And we can cancel it. We can cancel it at any time, something I read in there that said we can cancel it with notice.
With a 15-day notice from either one. So I would encourage y'all to read through it closely, make sure we see everything. I think Jeff found some items that I think is important to think about. Jeff, you might mention why you highlighted Hinds County as far as any.
Well, of course, because Hinds County is down in Jackson and we're right here, so if we have a dispute with them, I think it would be much more convenient for us to resolve it here in Lowndes County rather than in where they're located. But that's not, it's not illegal to agree to Hinds County. I just pointed out, I don't recommend it.
And didn't you say that a lot of the cases are backed up in Hinds County?
Yeah, they have a huge docket down there, so, you know, your outcome would probably be slower getting to a final conclusion. The other issue was, and we run into it all the time, they had us indemnifying them, and we can't legally do that. So I'm sure they'll agree to strike that.
And then I would ask, we just add federal down there too, just so there's no, because they have indicated in my conversations with them, and as Councilman Jones pointed out, they did say they would, they would actually be helping at the federal level as well. So if we don't have any other conversation on that, I would just encourage y'all to continue to look at that, and then if you would like to speak to Mr. Thomas, I can make that happen. He's enjoyable to talk to, very knowledgeable, and I think you would enjoy getting to know him. Okay. Does anybody else have any comments or?
Mayor, I would like at this point, if we talk to our state representatives to see their opinion on how it's going on their end, just to make sure we're all on the same page, that yes, they think this. So, Ms. McLean and, Mr. Kabir and, Younger, and Taylor, you know, if some of them are gonna say the same thing, maybe not have to ask all of them to come, but maybe get a plan together, you know, of a couple of state representatives, if one's from the Senate and others from the House, that might make a difference, but I don't know that we need all four. But maybe next week, if we could see if we could get together and at least get their opinion from somebody who's in the trenches making these decisions, what they're gonna decide. And as far as lobbyists, yes, that's a good idea, we absolutely need it, or, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point, Councilman Green. I have been talking to them informally, and very much what they said when we had the open session with them back in November, that they're looking for us to come with they want something to come down that there's unity behind from the city. They obviously said you want to do the best you can to leverage the money, all the kind of the things that we've talked about over and over. They have all indicated to me that whatever we come down there with, they're obviously going to do everything they can to support us. So they're thinking about it. But I can surely try to find a time when we can talk to them. But I would encourage y'all to call them as well. They like to hear from us. So, any other comments? I want to thank everybody for being here, and remind folks that you can go back and watch this on our Facebook page and on YouTube. Is that right, Joe?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Carl Lee. It was good to see you. Carl Lee's in the room. All right, everybody. At this point, if there's no other questions, I'll call this meeting adjourned.